Hello and welcome to the Car Kid Reviews channel, and welcome to the 2025 Subaru Forester. All updated for 2025, and in today's video we're going to do a proper technical review under the hood. We're going to take a look underneath it, inside and out, some things we like, some things we do not like, right after this. Let's start our technical review under the hood. Now, the 2025 Forester only has one powertrain option. This is a 4-cylinder boxer engine, FB25D. So here is the thing with this engine. This is the same engine as the previous generation, except in somewhere in the transition from the previous generation to this generation, you would think we make more power or anything. We actually make less power. Previous generation made 182 horsepower. This one only makes 180. Right now, it's not a big deal. 2 horses have escaped. But 10 years from now, 15 years from now, you may miss those 2 horses. They were good Subi horses. Going back to the engine. Mechanical construction. This is a boxer engine. You have plastic valve covers on both ends. The cylinder head is a 2-piece cylinder head. This engine actually has 4 camshafts, tiny little baby camshafts, 2 on each side. Now, this engine has dual variable valve timing, so you have 4 gears because you have 2 cams, and they are oil controlled. You have the oil controller right on the nose of the giant front cover. It has the world's largest front timing cover, of course. This engine does have roller rockers, but it does not have hydraulic lifters. It just has what looks like a hydraulic lifter. It's actually just a pivot point. The adjustment of the valve clearance, which is manual, happens on the little cap that sits on top of the valve. Very interesting why they do that. I assume it has something to do with the fact that this is a boxer engine and you can't really put a lifter in that configuration. That's the only reason I see, but it just doesn't make sense, honestly. Moving away from that, this engine does have 2 timing chains, 2 very long timing chains, 1 for each bank of the boxer. Both have hydraulic tensioners. Now, the oiling system in this engine is very interesting. And before we get to the block and talk about it, let's say one thing about the oiling system. The oil pump sits on the nose of the cranks, part of the front timing cover. But from that, you have passages in the front timing cover. Then some of it goes to the cylinder head, some of it goes to the block, and everywhere else, and then the pickup tube at the bottom. This engine is very sensitive with sealer and kind of sealer application, because you have a lot of it in the front cover and in the cam caps and whatnot. So service is important that is done by a specialist. That is one thing that I will say. Now, the block is a 2-piece block. This is pretty standard with boxer engines. But the cool thing about this one is, unlike some iterations of the FB series engine, you can remove the rods and the piston without disassembling the half. So the rods are kind of sideways, so the bolts are sideways. So when you take the oil pan and upper oil pan, you can actually remove the cap and push the rod out. That is pretty cool. Now, this engine also lost the vacuum pump, which used to sit all the way in the back. You have just a block-off plate because this engine was designed with a vacuum pump. You have the electronic brake booster. It's a pretty cool addition. That's why they got rid of the vacuum pump. Now, the cooling system on this engine is super simple. You just have a mechanical water pump that's belt-driven, very simple belt. Thermostat, no fancy valves, nothing really about it. Very, very basic. Now, the fuel system in this engine is direct injection only. This is the only question mark that we had. So the whole thing with Subaru and Toyota and the BRZ and the FRS and the GT86 was that it was a Subaru engine, but it had Toyota's D4S, so it had direct and port injection at the same time. This one only has direct. Wish they would have integrated that system. That would have been kind of a result of the joint venture. So you have 4 direct injectors. This is right underneath the intake manifold at the top here. High pressure fuel pump. The only thing I am noticing here, the high pressure fuel pump used to be more towards the back. Now it's more towards the front. That is pretty cool. Now, the transmission in the Forester, just like almost all Subarus, this is a CVT transmission. At the beginning, they had issues. Things seem to have gotten better over time, but don't hold me to that. Time will tell. But CVTs are usually pretty complicated, and that is the downside of them. But this one seems pretty well made. Does have a steel oil pan. We'll look at it in a bit. But this car is kind of party piece, is a symmetrical all-wheel drive system. Most cars in this segment that say all-wheel drive. They're usually front-wheel drive with some power sent to the rear. When you take off and when you need it, then it just cuts it out and it's front-wheel drive. This is not the case here. This is always driving four wheels, and that's why this is a unique system to Subaru. There's not a lot of cars out there in this segment, in this configuration, that has proper all-wheel drive. You're always driving four wheels, and that is pretty cool. Now, looking around here, I mean, this is a new model and all that. This is a carryover engine, and what I love about Subaru is they don't overcomplicate things, but at the same time, everything is high quality. I mean, seriously high quality, folks. I love that the high pressure fuel pump has a metal cover on top of it. The plastics don't feel cheap and flimsy. Everything feels proper. In addition to that, this engine does have a few things that are interesting. One of them is good, one of them is not good. The good thing is, early iterations of the FB series engine, if you take a corner at a little bit of a faster speed, not track or anything, just kind of an on-ramp, oil will pull on one side and you start having oiling problems. So what they did here, they put a big baffle behind the valve cover to take up that void where oil would collect. So now you don't have that pooling effect. This engine actually does have that feature. But what it doesn't have that at newer iterations of the FB series did get, you don't have a oil cooler. Granted, this is not a performance car in any way, shape, or form, but still, Boxer engines could use an oil cooler. This one does not have it. I wish it did. That would have been something really cool to see. But overall, I see not a lot of plastic other than the valve covers, which are really high quality. There's not a lot of plastic, and that is the cool thing. Even the plastic stuff, they're really high quality. This is what I love about this. Things are not cheap. Nothing is perfect in the world, but things are not cheap here, cheaply made. And that is pretty cool. Let's take a look underneath the 2025 Subaru Forester. So everything is covered in the front, but something that Subaru does that I really like. If you look right here, drain plug is right here. It's not even covered. Filters at the top. So very simple oil change on this thing. Let's look at the front suspension here. So steel lower control arm. This is a separate ball joint, a little bit of a different configuration, the Subaru configuration. Steel knuckle. It's pretty interesting that they left the steel knuckle. Everybody's moving to aluminum. This one is a steel knuckle, which is really nice. Steel sway bar links, which is nice. Dual piston caliper. You can see them right here. Dual piston caliper. This is not a big car, but it's a little bit on the bigger side, so it's nice to have a bigger brake. McPherson strut to the top. Everything is standard. This is the CVT transmission. You notice the oil pan here is steel. Pretty cool. If you look around here, though, something that's slowly disappearing. Oh, do I see a cable? It's a transmission cable, because of course this has a regular shifter. We'll look at it in a little bit. That is pretty cool. Now, the asymmetrical all-wheel drive system, the differential, front differential is somewhere in this area. The axles come out to drive the front. Then you notice there's a prop shaft that goes all the way to the back. Speaking of the back, the exhaust. Historically, Subaru exhausts are not the highest quality in the world, but not the lowest. This is actually pretty decent. Now, this car is covered in mud or something from an event, but I like that they have everything covered here, not wide open. This is part of the kind of an insulated, better insulated cabin. It's not completely insulated, but everything under here, good quality stuff. I like that the covers almost go to the edge. There is that pinch weld, but they have this other cover covering it. Then as we make our way back, here's this front, here's the rear differential. You notice it is cast iron. It's not a big differential, but it is cast iron. That gives it a lot of strength. Small axles that come out of it. Of course, this is not meant for like super heavy duty off-road, but this is still one of the most capable all-wheel drive systems in this style of car. Now we look at the rear suspension. We do have multi-arms. They're all steel arms. Even the upper one is pretty nice, nicely stamped, and it just has a really nice appearance to it. Now the knuckle in the back is aluminum. This is something I expected to see in the front, but not. They still have the steel, which is nice. Sway bar is steel. You do have single piston caliper with the integrated parking brake motor on it. That is becoming the standard in the automotive industry. Now, Why can't everyone do it like Subaru? Yes, we do have these openings, but there is a cover for this area. It's really nice. Do you see how this car has a lot of mud on it? Do you see how the mud got shot here and it stopped right there? Didn't really fill up the inside from the tire. Same thing on this side. Now you do have a little heat shield here, but you do have an opening. Do you see where the mud is? That's why we don't like openings here, because you'll just collect all kinds of stuff there, and you're carrying all this stuff now. Very high quality underneath here, and that is high quality and simple. I mean, look at this suspension. Everything's super simple, super accessible. Nothing really over the top. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. They didn't overcomplicate stuff, and I really like that. Let's take a look at the outside of the 25 Subaru Forester. I really like this new look that they're going for. See, it still looks like a Subaru 100%. It still doesn't follow the automotive industry fashion, but they managed to just... I love how this looks. Just look at this little, like, darker area, and they made this the color of like white. It looks nice. It's not over the top, but it does look nice. And of course, Subaru being Subaru, you still have proper fog light, not some LED thing. And then Subaru being Subaru, you still have a very noticeable place for your license plate, because they don't want you to not put a license plate. They actually made a spot for it so you can see it. What I love about it is they didn't get carried away. Again, this is Subaru. They care about their all-wheel drive system, safety, and kind of simplicity, ruggedness. That's why they kept things simple. Look at that ground clearance. There isn't many cars that in this segment that have this much ground clearance on basically all their models. That is the first good thing. Second good thing is, look at the hood. I mean, if this doesn't say this is not overstyled, I don't know what will. It's a very simple hood. There's this crease right here which carries the body line. Very subtle crease here and there, and that's it. Just keep it simple. There's no need to get carried away. Now on this particular trim, you have these, that whatever that color is. Yeah. There was one engineer in Subaru that they had to make happy. See, they got the wheels, they got a few other badges here and there. Not my thing, but going back to the car. See, this is something, again, Subaru is trying to do. I mean, watch the level of complication for the design. And this is very strange to see from Subaru. I get that these are not exactly a even shape, but what exactly happened here? So, in order to make this shape, we had to literally make this panel follow this shape just to make that shape, because this does absolutely nothing. I think 110% of Subaru owners would not have cared if this was straight and this was straight as well. Again, maybe the same design engineer that did that color did this. It's okay. But then there's a lot more Subaru in this. You notice this body line right here, this height. See how it drops down? You can literally see it drop down, and the belt line is lower. And the reason for that is you have massive windows. Big windows equal big visibility. And I love that. They did that intentionally to give you more visibility. And that you do get a lot of. Now at the bottom, you still get that little color. Not my thing. Back door though. Look at this opening angle of this back door. It's almost 90 degrees. I really like that. But additionally, something we noticed. Look at this little guide here, pretty heavy duty guide. It goes right here. Wonder what that does. That's something we try to look into it, see possible reason. I mean, it is to align the door. It's not particularly a huge door, but it does make a nice sound when you open it, close it. It doesn't feel cheap and flimsy, and I think that has to do with it. Now, the fuel door, it's just manual. If you lock it, lock the car, it will also lock. And then they wrote here symmetrical all-wheel drive in that same strange color. I like when they do that, because they should be very proud of that part, because that's one of the biggest parts of this car. Now going in the back here, this is where I have tremendous respect for Subaru, because they don't copy people. They don't care about the trends. They have their people that buy Subarus, and they're very good people. They're sensible. They care about their cars. We're going to make cars for these people, not for the masses trying to attract everybody. Because they did the bar taillight, but they didn't exactly do the bar taillight because they're not copycats. They kept their, this is a very Subaru taillight, but they gave you a line. It's not actually lit. And that is a cool thing. I think this thing, you cannot make it look better. This is not a showstopper, but it looks pretty cool. And then Forester is stamped here. I really like that. And they wrote Subaru here, very small, sport, the trim, and they left it at that. I really like that they moved the asymmetrical all-wheel drive here, not here in the back. Now, if you look at down here, we still have that little interesting color. It almost feels like we were supposed to have dual exhaust, but we don't. Just they made the cutout on the panel for it, but never really did it, which is fine. Now, the back door is power. Pretty fast opening door, which I like that. And I especially like that, given that this is a single motor, not a dual motor. So this is just a shock. Nothing to it. This is actually where the motor is. You see the wire. I don't like that the wire goes here. It has a little bit of complication for service, but it's a single wire. Good and bad. Good is, if this ever goes out and you don't want to shell out a small fortune to replace it, you can just buy a shock and install it. It's simple as that. Bad thing is, you're loading this door on one side. Eventually, this may twist the body of the door and give you issues. That's the only downside of that. But there's a lot here to like than dislike. First, now they wrote Subaru here. Great, yes. If they wouldn't have written it, would have been fine too. But I love this. So you have two lights here. But the best part is you can shut them off or turn them on with the door. That is a pretty cool feature. If you don't want them, you can shut them off. Usually cars that have lighting here, you're kind of stuck with it. Here, you have the control. Now, looking in the back here, it's pretty decent space, not the biggest thing, but again, this is a Forester, not a bigger model from Subaru. So, you do have some storage here. Not the biggest storage in the world, but the coolest thing is, because this is a Subaru, you have a spare tire. We love that. I wish every single car still has a spare tire. Especially cars that are meant to go kind of out there. Adventure cars, they should have a spare tire. Because you don't want to find yourself in the middle of nowhere camping and you have a flat tire. Now, there's no cell phone, there's no reception, and that's kind of a problem. Now, this is removable. I just wanted to show you one thing. The back seat. Now, they did not give you access to kind of push the second row down for storage, but granted, it is not a big area. So they did give them to you right here. Now it's a pretty big space. Not the widest in the world. Your tire does intrude a little bit here, your wheel well, but it is decent for the segment. It is decent for the size. The best part is, even though everything is plastic, it's pretty high quality plastic. It doesn't feel like it's about to break, and that is a cool thing. Now, the back door does have close the door only, or close it and lock it, which is a pretty useful and nice feature. Pretty fast closing door. I really like that part. Let's take a look at the interior of the 2025 Subaru Forester. The thing about this interior is, when you step in it the first time, it's not a wowing interior. It's not, you're not going to be amazed. Oh my God, this is the nicest thing in the planet. And I feel like that's intentional. This is possibly the least gimmicky interior in 2025, except one thing which we're going to talk about. Let's look at the steering wheel. Very basic controls, very clearly laid out, large print, no gimmicks. Gauges, 2 mechanical gauges, 1 screen in the middle. That's all you need. Most of these cars that have a giant screen, all they do is mimic a gauge and do nothing else, just to look cool. Not here. And I love it. It looks really cool. And then mechanical shifter. I mean, 2025, everybody's doing some gimmicky little shifter. Cable shifter, as we looked at underneath it. That is super cool. Now, they did do a little bit of design stuff, just to tiny little stuff. They give you this little pattern here. Now, this very strange color also carries on the interior with some trims. Seats They're nice, but they're not the most comfortable in the world. This is something Subaru always does. The biggest thing is their thigh support is not long enough, and seats just sitting in them for a while, they start to wear you out a little bit. The other thing is the sunroof. Now, you do have a manual shade here, but it's such a massive sunroof. I mean, I have to reach all the way here to bring the shade back and forth. It's very interesting that they gave you this giant sunroof, which I can live with that. But then we talk about the biggest elephant in the room, the giant infotainment screen. This is something Subaru is doing, not only this, just all their models. It completely feels out of character. I mean, this is such a sensible, basic, no nonsense, no gimmick interior. Here's this giant iPad in the middle of the dash. If it was done well, I would be okay with that. But unfortunately, it's not. They did do an update, things got a little better, but it's slow, it's glitchy, and your HVAC controls are all here except your temperature and like front defrost, rear defrost. I wish they would have just cut the screen in half, leave the top, just regular infotainment, put manual dials here or what have you. 100% of Subaru owners wouldn't have complained. That's all I'm gonna say. This feels, it's not well done. Could really use more work. I admire the update they did, and I admire Subaru for this entire car, but this feels out of place. And on top of it, if you go in the base model, you don't have the big screen. You have two screens with a bunch of buttons in the middle. Looks even worse. Why are we insisting on having this giant screen? Wish they would get rid of it, honestly. Now, something about the 2025 Subaru that you will immediately notice if you've driven previous generations. This one is definitely smoother and quieter than previous iteration. Now, it's no way, shape, or form a luxury car, but you definitely notice an improvement. And that is a very welcome improvement. I really like it. Subaru's never been really about quiet cars and smooth cars, but this one, definitely noticeable improvement. And the next thing is visibility. This is something that's always been good in the Forester, and this one continues on. The visibility is super good. The windows are very tall. You look all the way in the back. You have tall windows. Everything is wide open. And I love that. This is one of the things you want in a Forester. It's very comfortable to drive. No drama, no fuss, except the screen. And the visibility is great. Let's take a look at the second row seat of the Subaru Forester. I'm 5'7". This is my driving position. I have a lot of knee room. I have very good headroom. This is a very comfortable second row with a minimal hump in the middle, which is pretty nice. Now, the seat's completely wrapped up in I don't think it's real leather, but the leather that it has. But I like that they give you two pockets here, like two layers. I haven't seen that in a lot of cars. You do have two vents here. You have some USB-A, USB-C, which is pretty cool. Pretty nice second row seat, pretty comfortable, pretty roomy. I really like it. And that big sunroof kind of gives you a nice view because it's so big. Well, let's talk about some things I do not like about the 2025 Subaru Forester. I actually really like this car. So some of them are slight nitpicks or stuff kind of all Subarus, not just this one. Starting with the steering wheel. So they made such a big deal about the pinion change, and this has the same steering rack as the WRX, and it's a direct feeling rack. Let me translate that to you. Yes, it is a direct feeling steering rack, but that's not always good on the real world, because here's the problem with this steering rack. You don't have an on-center feel. So you're driving straight, you're constantly having to dance the car back and forth just to keep it going straight. It's a very strange feeling, and actually on a long trip it's going to be annoying. I mean, what was wrong with a numb steering wheel? Nobody will buy this car expecting it to handle like a race car, let alone a good handling car. This is not what they're meant for. So why can't we just keep a nice on-center feel? I don't know. But equally, what I don't understand is the infotainment system. I mean, you get into this interior, here's a sensible, no-nonsense interior, except that giant screen in the middle that absolutely makes no sense. And if it was well done, that's fine. Even though they updated it and some things got a little better, it is so slow by modern standards. If you're gonna be bold and put that big screen, you gotta do it better. It seriously needs to be either gone or significantly updated to be better. But here's the worst part. 100% of Subaru owners would not have complained if they were to put a smaller screen and manual dials for the HVAC. Please, if you're a Subaru owner, comment down below so Subaru maybe can see it, things can move in the right direction, because that screen is really not good. But on top of that, if you go in the base model, you don't get the big screen. You get something that's even worse. You get two screens with buttons in the middle that do exactly the same thing. You know, when I read that, I was really hopeful that we go into the base model and we get a screen with dials. No, this is what you get instead. I don't know what's going on. Why are the insistence of putting everything in a screen? That doesn't match Subaru's image, honestly. And that is this 2025 Subaru Forester. Here is the recipe of this car. First, this is a very important car for Subaru. I mean, they've had this model for a very long time. And in this new model, it's actually kind of a soft update. They didn't go to town with it, let's put it this way. I like the visual updates. Still very much a Subaru. They don't just copy everybody else and the trends and the fashions of the automotive industry. Here's the good things about this car. It is well made. It is no nonsense, no gimmicks, no dramas. It has high ground clearance. It has a very sophisticated all-wheel drive system. It is, as a package, it's actually a very nice car. The truth have to be said. The subtle improvements they did behind the scenes, they equal to a lot. Now, with that, no car is perfect, ever. The seat comfort, this is something with Subaru for a long time. They could work on that. And the other thing is, the biggest elephant in the room is the infotainment system. Completely out of place. I mean, a little screen in the middle, infotainment, and manual dials for the HVAC controls would have been perfectly fine. Probably save them a few bucks, maybe lower the price of the car. Speaking of the price of the car, that's one of their strong things here. I mean, this car, with car prices going all over the place, this car, base model, is just over $30,000. This one, as tested, is $37,500. If you consider everything and kind of look at similar SUVs with similar options, even though this is technically not an SUV, you're well into the 40s. Well, not this one. And that is a good thing, because for that money, you're not buying some cheapo car that's glued together with cheap glue. It's actually well made. And that's the best part about it. They did not compromise. Now, the engine is a little bit of an oldie. They did keep it from the previous generation. They didn't put the newest engine that they have, but that is both good and bad. Good, because they've been at it for a while. You kind of have a track record of this engine. Same thing with the transmission. Bad, because where's my 2 horsepower, Subaru? Why did we drop if it's the same engine? That's just how they went with. Folks, if you are a Subaru buyer, I'm glad to announce that this is business as usual. This is a safe car. This is a well-made car. This is a no gimmicks car. It has high ground clearance, proper symmetrical all-wheel drive system, and that is a recipe you should be used to. And I'm glad that they didn't go overboard and kind of cover that up and make it go away. Folks, I hope this video is helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.